This is the legendary father, Stephaun Blahnik, and you're watching Spotlight on M.O.B TV.
Hi, Stephaun.
What's up?
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for being on my show.
Thank you for asking me.
This is my new show, so it's actually called Spotlight. And the Spotlight is on HIV prevention and how to stay safe, right? I know there are a lot of people who like to be in relationships with people who are positive, even though they're negative, whether they're risk takers or whether they're lovers, whichever one, and they stay safe. And I know there are people who
I've been in those relationships.
Okay, this is perfect then. So my question to you is, how do you stay safe how do you play safe and stay safe being in a relationship with someone who is HIV positive?
Well, I think the conversation for me is always about overall sexual health and not just about, like wearing a condom. So if the person that you're in a relationship with is HIV positive and you're the HIV negative person, you want to have an open and honest conversation about that person's health, not just, again, in the concept of wearing a condom, but, what is the person's viral load? What is their T-cell count? Are they eating right? Are they sleeping well? Do they have a good diet? What is the stress level like in their life? And being able to manage all that, and then also to have a real frank conversation about, what are their intentions for life. I know that there are people who have, they exist there, they live in this kind of victim space, and so they may or may not feel that it's important for them to be concerned about their overall health after receiving the HIV positive diagnosis. So again, I think overall health on both sides is a key factor, and being able to really manage that. I know in a previous relationship, which is really interesting because, and I don't know if I want to disclose this or not, but I was, my last long-term relationship was with a person who was HIV positive, and we made it work. It wasn't an issue because they were positive. I looked at them as a person that I cared about very deeply. They disclosed to me, I knew before we started talking, that they were HIV positive, so it wasn't, something that came up during our relationship. And in terms of playing safe, well, as you probably know, I work in the field of HIV and public health, so my experience in the field has afforded me the understanding and knowledge of lots of different things. So in general, in my long-term relationships, I typically don't use condoms, and so that is a decision that I make, an informed decision that I make based on the person that I'm with, us getting tested.
Thank you for being honest.
No problem. Us getting tested and, that whole thing. And so part of it, though, is that if I'm dating someone who's HIV positive, then there's no need to get HIV tested because I know your HIV status. One of the keys is to make sure that all your pink parts are healthy. If you don't know what your pink parts are, let's talk about your pink parts. Your pink parts are your mouth, your anus or your butthole, your vagina, and your urethra, which is your pee hole for your men. So to make sure that those parts are healthy, that they're free of germ, that they're free of irritation, and that you're not doing things that would irritate them, or you don't have an STD that would cause an irritation to those areas. And for most people who do this work like myself, we know that if you have an STD, gonorrhea, chlamydia, syphilis, for example, that you're more likely to transmit or pass along or even contract HIV. So in my relationships, I'm more typically concerned about the STD piece and, again, overall health, especially as it relates to sex.
Okay.
Having different kinds of sex can put you at different levels of risk. So
like kinky sex?
Well, not necessarily, but well, I like being tied up in whips and chains and stuff too.
Hold on. So. With my belt. I love you, Stephaun, for that. I'm the same way. Right.
So, you know, I like all different kinds of stuff, and I'm not going to go through my list, but
Can I get a list on the side?
You can get the list on the side.
Thank you. Okay.
But if you are a person who is receptive, if you are in a same-sex relationship, you know, two guys, and you are a receptive partner, meaning that you take it in the butt, then you need to be concerned about the person's HIV status, definitely their STI status. If you are the person who is the penetrative partner, then you need to be concerned about the same things, obviously. But the scenarios are different. You know, if you're in what we call a serodiscordant relationship, where one partner is negative and the other is positive, or even when both partners are positive. So
I have a question. When do you think is the right time to disclose to someone that you are HIV positive?
That is a personal choice, and I think that it depends on the person who is positive and the person that they're telling.
Okay, and I have another question.
Sure.
Do you think that if you are not concerned about your status, i.e. having sex, you know, barebacking, spitting, and so forth, that the person that you are having this barebacking sex with should disclose their status with you, even though the both of you are going to partake in this barebacking session?
Can you explain?
Okay. Let's say I want to have sex with someone and I want to do it raw. And the person agrees to it. But the person is HIV positive. Do you think at that time they should say, you know what, for your health concerns, I am HIV positive? Or do you think that they might say, well, you know what, if you really don't give a shit if I'm HIV positive or not, since you want to have bareback sex, then I shouldn't tell you anyway?
Well, I think two things. I think that regardless as to whether or not the person should or shouldn't disclose that information, I think that there's a level of personal responsibility that should probably factor in there somewhere.
Okay.
And so beyond whether or not the person will or will not disclose, because in a lot of instances we know that disclosure does not happen, especially if it's a random or, you know, somebody you meet in a club or something like that, the disclosure may not happen. And so you have to make a decision, and hopefully an intelligent decision about and you know what it is that you want and what you value. You know, in terms of the second piece, I think that there's a myth and there's this energy out there around sex that's negative, and I think that HIV magnifies that negative energy. And so the idea is that if you are having unprotected sex, you're somehow uninformed, you're self-destructive, and you're irresponsible. And I think that there are people out there who consciously choose to have unprotected sex, and they do so from an educated standpoint, and they do so also from a responsible standpoint. You know, if they're going out and they're getting tested and they're managing their risk in other ways. But I think it's also important to say that, you know, I find it really interesting that there's so much of a unknown, or there's so much of a desire to ignore how much HIV is actually in our communities. When I think about the numbers of folks that I know personally, and I think about the numbers of folks that I've given, you know, test results to in other places that I've worked in, it's just, you know, this is not something that we can continue to ignore. And I think that when we really start to take a look at this situation, how it's affecting our community, and we begin to really look at how to take away the stigma regarding HIV, I think that we'll start to really see some change. But we can't really address it if people are still fearing it and not getting educated about it. You know, if you are a person who likes to, you know, bottom.
Yes, for the gods.
And you...
There's nothing wrong with bottoming.
There's nothing wrong with taking it.
Okay, you take it, girl.
So if you're a person who likes to take it, you know, and you're with somebody you don't know their status, you know, instead of the penetration, you know, you might do frottage, or you might, you know, put some little lotion in between your legs and have them, you know, go up in your thighs.
Exactly.
So there's all different kinds of things that
sounds hot.
It is actually.
I'm gonna
hot.
have to make a few phone calls.
I've tried it before.
I'm gonna make some phone calls right now.
And so there's other things that we can do to still enjoy the sexual experience with the person, and also have some safety in this as well.
Oh, well, thank you, Stephaun.
And if you want to know more about safe sex and risk reduction and all of that good stuff, you can always come on down to the Mocha Center, 1092 Main Street in Buffalo, and 107 Liberty Pole Way in Rochester, New York.
That's right.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Stephaun, for being on Spotlight with me.